Madam Chair, we're ready to begin when you are.
Thank you. Just seconds, please. Yes, welcome to the Metropolitan Water District Representative Caucus and meeting of the Board of Directors for West Basin Municipal Water District, February 5th. I think it's about 12:35. I'm calling this meeting to order. Do we have a quorum, Mr. General Manager?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'll read roll call. Director Desi Alvarez. Here. Director Scott Houston. Here. Director Don Deere. Here. And President Gloria Gray.
Here. Thank you, and welcome to everyone there. Item 3 is public comment. Do we have anyone from the public who wishes to speak?
Madam President, we have not received any requests for public comment prior to today's meeting, though I do notice that there are people here in person as well as online. If there's any member of the public that would like to speak under public comment, please indicate so by raising your hand virtually or in the room. And Madam Chair, I do not see any requests.
All right, thank you very much. Item 4, discussion items. Item 4.1, Metropolitan Water District's operational response to the fires. Mr. General Manager, would you please introduce the presenter, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam President. And in doing this, I just want to maybe provide a little bit of context. At a recent general managers meeting, I had the opportunity to listen to a presentation and an overview by Assistant General Manager Shane Chapman of Metropolitan Water District. In doing that, I thought he provided a lot of great insight, really allowed me to see not just how the West Basin Municipal Water District service area has been impacted, but really the coordinated efforts by Metropolitan Water District amongst all of the agencies that have been impacted by the recent fires. It's clearly noticeable that Metropolitan Water District, under the leadership of Devin Apadier, really allowed his entire team to help. And I know that West Basin Municipal Water District staff greatly benefited from the coordinated effort there. But in hearing the presentation, I didn't really fully understand all of the impacts of the Foothill Municipal Water District and the General Manager, Nina Jasmine-Darian, as well as LADWP under the leadership of Janice Quinones, as well as Anselmo Collins. And then, of course, I also wanted to highlight just all the work that was being done by our member agency, LA County Waterworks 29, and Mr. Mark Fistrella. I think you're going to see throughout this presentation that just how large of a coordinated effort this was. I know that West Basin, again, greatly benefited from the leadership by Metropolitan Water District. That was the reason for this request and bringing this presentation before you today. So with that, I believe that we have Assistant General Manager Shane Chapman online for Metropolitan Water District operational update on the response to the fires.
Well, thank you, EJ, and good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Excellent. I apologize for not being there in person, but we'll run through this. What you have before you says, oh, okay, actually, we have the right title site. I'm looking at a different one. We're going to share the same slide deck with the Engineering Operations and Technology Committee here at Metropolitan on Monday. So let's just run through it and give you a sense of everything that was going on. So obviously we've had very serious wildfires in the region, several of them, most notably Palisades and the Eaton Fire, where most of the damage was. This was the largest emergency activation that Metropolitan has done, I believe, since the Northridge earthquake in 1994. This was a significant event. So we activated the Emergency Operations Center and a couple of the incident command posts at Weymouth, Jensen, and in the western portion of the distribution system, because that's where we're going to be drawing resources from. Coordinated very closely with the first responders and the emergency management agencies, fire, law enforcement, et cetera. We made some operational adjustments to the system throughout these events, and we'll touch on each one of these things. There were no significant impacts or damage to any metropolitan facilities. We really focused on safety and water quality through site assessments, safety bulletins, and virtual meetings, because we were working in very hazardous conditions initially. And then most of the effort was on providing mutual aid, mutual assistance to support the impacted water utilities and member agencies. Next slide. The organization here, EOC director was Mickey Chowdhury, taking turns with Keith Nobriga. And then I was the executive management liaison. And this is our typical structure. A lot of this was done on the move. It's amazing what the technology we have today affords us, and being very flexible and adaptable. Next slide. So this event really kicked off on January 7th, actually. And by the 8th, we had activated the EOC, and we were going at a level 2 for a 12-hour shift during the day, and then level 3 at night. Those different levels just denote the staffing effort. We did embed the emergency response trailer. This is something that we take to major events or out on shutdowns. And we set that up with CAL FIRE at their incident command post at the Rose Bowl for the Eaton fire. And then we also embedded staff at Zuma Beach with the Palisades fire incident command post, and later with the Hughes fire. We like to do that. We stay very close to our partners, the first responders and fire and law enforcement, because we can help them and they can help us much more quickly in these situations. Next slide. Sort of gives you a timeline along across the bottom there. So we partnered with the bargaining units and our employees, and we kept safety front of mind throughout these events. We relocated from the Eagle Rock Operation Control Center and Security Watch Center. That's on the other side of the Rose Bowl. Just as a precaution, we moved our operators over to the backup operations center at Laverne at the Weymouth plant. Big focus on air quality, obviously. You all supported us as we did a remote board meeting. It was really bad here at Union Station. And then we published several safety talks just on working in these hazardous conditions, about down power lines, about driving carefully, et cetera. And those were also pushed out to the other partner utilities, Edison, PG&E, et cetera. Next slide. Well, one thing that got us through this was a lot of communications to the board, to the employees, with our member agencies. And so the external affairs team did a great job for us, making sure that those communications were flowing and people were kept informed so we could stay on top of what we needed to accomplish. Next. The employees really stepped up through this event. So we had 23 employees evacuated and 3 lost their homes, unfortunately. Devin took action and set up a structure to support those employees that's outlined here. AFSCME demonstrated a lot of leadership and stepped right up and took care of some of those employees, at VRBOs, et cetera. And you can see the different elements to the support that was provided to the impacted employees. That was well received. Next slide, please. So I mentioned operational changes. I'll start up in the top left there. We coordinated with DWR to accelerate a planned shutdown. At Castaic Lake, DWR was doing some work in the outlet tower, and that tower was out of service, which means the foothill feeder that carries the water from Castaic Lake down to the Jensen plant there in Granada Hills was out of service. So we were taking advantage of this shutdown, DWR shutdown, and we were doing some work at the Jensen plant and inspecting the foothill feeder. When the Palisades fire got going, we worked with DWR and we accelerated that shutdown by 3 days. So they pulled out and we pulled out of Jensen and got that back online as quick as we could. And then we filled Live Oak Reservoir to make sure the community there was comfortable. We turned on Gregg Avenue to try and get more water over to DWR prior to bringing Jensen back online. And then we used the Sepulveda pressure control structure, which for a time, and we'll look at this, was threatened by the Palisades fire, but fortunately it didn't encroach on that facility, to maintain some emergency flows and higher pressure for LADWP to recover their tanks that serve the Palisades area. We adjusted flows at Weymouth, Deemer, and Jensen during this period, flowing more water from Deemer into the central pool so we could take more water from Weymouth and push it over to all the way over to DWP. Next slide. While we were focused on the Palisades and the Eaton fires, later the Hughes fire, et cetera, there were quite a few other issues going on in the system that we had to keep an eye on. The pressure control structures, a lot of them were on emergency generators because of the public safety power shutoffs, PSPS. The Skinner and the Weymouth plants, treatment plants, went from ozone as the primary disinfectant to chlorine. We typically do that during the public safety power shutoffs because ozone is so energy intensive. We don't run that on the standby generators. And we were shuttling a lot of diesel fuel around to keep these generator operations up. Next slide. So I mentioned the Sepulveda pressure control structure. You see it there, one view of it in the lower right, and you see the defensible space around the structure. If there's a silver lining in this, I guess one of the things that they say is carpe diem, seize the day. With the governor's emergency declaration, we were able to do some things at this facility and others that we've not been able to do in terms of improving the defensible space. Some of this work was done on property that belongs to others, and we contacted them and they said, no, please go right ahead, where before they have not been as helpful. We put some water trucks in there, went down the perimeter, and then you can see over on the left, Palisades fire got within about a mile of Sepulveda pressure control structure. This is in the Sepulveda Pass, right below the Getty, right off the 405 Sepulveda Boulevard. And this is a very important structure during this event because this is how we were able to increase pressure to a treated water connection that LADWP was taking deliveries from. Next slide. I'm not going to read this to you, but I thought the LA Times did a great job covering these fires. In the lower right, that's a satellite picture that was in CNN of Altadena on fire, early morning hours of the 8th. And the very impactful media coverage here that really explains the situation. Within 2 hours of the ignition on the Eaton fire, the far west side, there was fire on the far west side of Altadena. A very, very fast spread. Same thing happened in the Palisades fire. Next slide. Here you see in the top left the pictures. That's a meeting hosted by Foothill Municipal Water District with the 4 impacted water utilities that are on the eastern part of Foothill service area, and we attended as well, and that was operational coordinations. I mentioned we were embedded with CAL FIRE. We're also working closely with CUEA, and that acronym is for California Utility Emergency Association. We're a member of that group, and their role is to coordinate response efforts between and among utilities, telecom, power, gas, water. And so they were working very closely with us. The lower left picture is some staff in our trailer at the ICP at the Rose Bowl. Next slide. This focuses on the Eaton fire, and you can see Foothill Municipal Water District service area and 4 impacted water utilities. Starting on the right, lower right, Kinaloa Irrigation District. They lost 40 homes or connections, so 7%. Modest damage compared to the others. Las Flores Water Company, they're in blue, lost 1,100 or 74% of their total connections. Rubio Canyon, 700 or 22% of their total connections, and Lincoln Avenue, 2,500 or 56% of their total connections. So just a massive amount of damage. Next slide. Here you can see some of pictures of some of the damage. Most significantly, there are 7 reservoirs. 6 of them, the roofs burned and caved in. The heat, intense heat from neighboring structures and trees was just too much for the structures. So it's going to be very challenging recovery for these utilities. Next slide. So we organized with 6 basic mutual assistance missions, and there were tasks issued out under each one of these. So critical facility protection, where we needed to improve defensible space around important structures. In the top left, that's around Foothills Pump Station, P1, which is right there by the Rose Bowl and Brookside Golf Course. We took down a lot of hazardous trees, debris removal. We provided equipment, fleet services, trucks were down, generators were down, and our mechanics and electricians rolled out and helped get those back online. I did a lot of work for standby generators, shuttling fuel initially until things stabilized and we were able to get fuel vendors to come back in. And also a lot of technical services, anywhere from GIS to hydraulic work, identifying interconnections, and just helping the group come together and figure out strategies to pull these systems back together temporarily until they're recovered. Next slide. Just some pictures of what was going on at the Rose Bowl. Top left is our trailer. Bottom left, some folks working in the trailer. It's Ricardo Hernandez, who did a fantastic job. That was our planning and logistics lead on the Eaton fire. And that may even be me in the background looking for food. I'm not sure. So what was important about this and unique for Metropolitan in such a large event was to work very closely with CAL FIRE. And they will be the incident management team in a major earthquake initially. So it's good to get our staff this kind of experience. In the bottom middle, that's what's called the cooperators meeting, where everybody gets together, fire, law enforcement, National Guard, all the utilities, and every morning receives a briefing on what the status of the fire is and how things are going. And then everybody reports out. So Foothill would report out for water. Then we would go to a repopulation meeting and talk about what areas could be repopulated, top middle. Then you see the Rose Bowl there at night, another picture. Next slide. The mutual assistance worked very well during this event. You see Rainbow Municipal Water District, they sent up a whole team, very well trained and experienced, a lot of experience with large fire situations in the San Diego area. Folks learned a lot from them. Some of our staff in the lower left there working at Foothills Pump Station. The planning and logistics support, the planning and support that Foothill provided to the water utilities, and the same drill there in the trailer on the initial days on the right. Next slide. So again, examples of the mutual assistance. We provided some fuel tanks to help with the fueling logistics. The mechanics and the electricians rolled out several times when generators would go down, and provided a lot of supplies and resources. Next slide. So one of the challenges was, as these water systems were trying to repressurize, water trucks and fire trucks kept taking water out of them. You can't help that. That's what they have to do. But we worked with Foothill and we put in a temporary water truck fill station at their pumping plant there by the Rose Bowl, and that worked pretty well. And that's also potable water from Metropolitan served through Foothill, and that can be used for potable water trucks as needed if there's a need for that. Next slide. Another service we provided is decontaminating offices and workspaces that the impacted water utilities were working in. Next slide. And water quality is a big focus here, returning these systems safely. So we arranged for a virtual forum with some experts that have worked on Paradise, Lahaina, Santa Rosa, other fires. Another meeting was just held with some of those subject matter experts today. Made sure there's sufficient lab capacity. A tremendous amount of samples have to be taken before State Division of Drinking Water will lift the do not drink orders. And that's a challenge for these smaller water utilities. But they're working with the mutual aid partners to have additional operators come in and assist with that. Next slide. So, on the left here, you see Public Water Agency Group. That's a group within Los Angeles County that's organized to provide mutual aid. California WARN, Water Agency Response Network. That's another group that helped. And then California Utilities Emergency Association. Yeah, help came in from all over. We had pump crews from Caucus, Rainbow, Corona Water Department, Pico Water, provided crews to support Rubio Canyon Water Company and other water companies. And then California Utility Emergency Association coordinated between the telecoms and with Edison, et cetera. Next. It's done here. So yeah, just as a reminder, our last slide here, there's a cycle for preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation. And, you know, clearly we were prepared, not as well as we could be for such a large event. Been through a lot of wildfires. I've never seen anything like this. And we learned a lot from the response, and we've got lessons learned that we'll be building out our response capability and posture from there, working closely with the member agencies. We'll be sharing those with the member agency managers soon, those lessons learned. And now things are transitioning into a very hard recovery period for LADWP, LA County Waterworks number 29, Pasadena Water and Power, and Foothill MWD and the water utilities impacted in their service area. And through that recovery, you will get, although it's going to be a tough path, you will get hardened, more resilient infrastructure that mitigate for this type of a risk in the future. Mr. Caldwell, questions in the room or online?
I defer to the board and Madam President.
Thank you.
May I ask a question?
Yes,
This is
yes,
Director
please,
Don
go
here.
on.
A lot of lessons have been learned, obviously, from this. What are the most important lessons that you're taking away from this incident?
We need to work closely with county fire departments and, well, all fire departments and CAL FIRE, and help them augment their resources so that when they're in a major battle like this, they have teams that are following closely behind the firefighters, teams of trained firefighters that are equipped and trained and can work safely in those kind of hazardous conditions to do water shutoffs for destroyed homes. These systems depressurized because every one of those destroyed homes becomes a leak, and that meter's running flat out. You know, a smaller meter, a 3/4 inch meter running flat out with 100 PSI behind it, which is pretty common for a retail distribution system. That's 13 gallons per minute. And 8,000 homes in the Palisades fire, 8,000 structures. We can all do the math. You cannot, no system can keep up with that. So during the event, as the firefight's happening, and if a home is destroyed, my recommendation to CAL FIRE is we implement a practice where that water service is shut off by the fire department. That'll help these
Thank you.
systems stay up.
Thank you.
Good point. Thank you.
Vice President. Shane, thank you for the presentation. Are there any more questions?
Yeah, Madam Chair, this is Director Houston.
Yes.
Well, first of all, thank you, Shane, for this. And I think it's extremely timely because, all of us in the water world are asking questions, but of course, a lot of the public's asking questions. And, I just will make a couple comments real fast. And one of those is, first of all, just thank you to everybody who was doing this work between the water, the water staff and professionals and also the public works people. I mean, you have to work hand in glove with those firefighters and the first responders. And, sometimes people just don't understand how this works, but, they're out there on the front line. So I want to say thank you. And we don't want to forget them in the midst of everybody who's working behind the scenes on this. The other thing too, in that was the water, thankfully, the water service was continuing in all the other areas not impacted. And I think that that's another part of what we have to acknowledge is that while parts of our region were in a very bad situation and burning, many of us still rely on that water safely. So I think that there's something to be said for that, of how these systems are designed and the resilience. But a couple of things, you guys were stretched, with 2 to 3 fires literally happening at once. Actually, there were more, right? They kept popping up in different areas. So that's just, it was an incredible situation. What I do want to say is obviously in our areas, Malibu and Topanga, which I represent, of course, and working with District 29. But I want to say thanks to the work you all have been doing. It has been confusing, of course, getting the right information between all the partners. I know that's something we're going to work on. But I will say that EJ and I have chatted. I mean, I definitely want us to be part of those post-fire conversations with all the partners as to, what we learned and where things can be improved, but also, how we're going to work with those residents going forward on the systems up there and wherever we can be partners, right? So that's more of a request that EJ knows. And then lastly, I'm sure Metropolitan is going to work on this, but obviously there's a lot of misinformation out there and just, flat foolishness that's been said. And of course, LAWP is probably been getting hit the hardest. But I do think it's imperative that through Metropolitan and the overarching water agency, and then each of us, how we are going to continue to better educate the public about how the systems actually work and what we can and cannot do. But yes, to the best of our ability, what we can do in the midst of these things. And so I also definitely, I'm just going to put the onus. I think Metropolitan is going to have to play a big role in this, as well as DWP has been doing. And sometimes it is like talking to a wall out there, but we have to do it. And lastly, I do think the LA Times did a great job. A lot of the stories they were running were wonderful, and they had a couple of good ones about how the system works. I even learned from some of that. So I think we've got to work on that in the next handful of months to minimize the confusion that's out there. As well as what you said, Shane, you literally could not put water through enough to deal with some of this on the fly. So those are more really just comments, Shane, but I want to say thank you. And, I hope you all will take those into consideration.
We certainly will, and thank you, Director Houston, for sharing those points. You're spot on, and we are on exactly the same page. I'm very much looking forward to partnering with the West Basin. And as an example and another lesson learned, we can do some planning and logistics work and have that in our hip pocket. So, major earthquake as an example. Nobody's running around at 2:00 in the morning trying to find out where Compton's interconnections are, et cetera, et cetera. We can do that work now and have it ready to go.
Thank you.
Excellent points.
All right, thank you, Shane and Director Houston for the comments. Any other questions?
Director Gray, this is Jesse. I just want to commend Shane and the rest of the med staff for their response, adding to Director, the previous director's comments, but especially in the response to the agencies up in Foothill. Most of those agencies are small water systems, and they were really adversely impacted. We didn't see a lot of coverage of those areas in the LA Times. And most of the stories were focused on the Palisades fire. But if you really look at it, those particular systems really needed assistance. And Matt did an excellent job, not only of responding, setting up there, but actually making equipment available to those agencies. So kudos to you.
Thank you, Director Alvarez.
Thank you, Director
Are there any-
Alvarez. Any other
That's all.
questions or comments?
Do we have any questions
Anyone?
from attendees? Director Katzman has a question.
Yes,
Shane, I don't know
Director.
whether can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah, Shane, how you doing?
excellent.
Two questions, one curiosity. First question is, I'd be curious to see how much actual water was consumed by all these fires in total. To see what it cost us in water supply reduction. And number two, something I've been talking to our staff about is getting rid of fossil fuel generators and replacing them with batteries. Just curious, are you guys looking to do some of that?
Answer to the second question is no. I'm a big fan of a robust diesel powered generator. They can really get you through in a pinch. And I do not have an answer to your first question.
But
One
I
about
didn't
water
expect
supply.
one, but
Yeah,
get back to me on that.
will do.
Thanks.
Any other questions, comments?
Madam Chair, there are no more questions in the room.
Right. Well, Shane, thank you for the presentation. I think the directors in West Basin has indicated and made a lot of comments, and I totally agree with them. Metropolitan, working in partnership with everyone involved in the fires, has done a yeoman's job and very appreciative. But thank you for briefing us on it today. If there aren't any other questions, are there any comments from those in the room? Directors or anyone there?
No questions in the room.
All right, well, thank you all for coming. I'm sorry I'm online, but I hope to see you next time in person. So thank you very much. And so, EJ, is there anything left on the agenda to do?
We're ready for adjournment.
All right, thank you very much. We are adjourned. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye all.
Thanks, Shane.